The ceremony was almost over when they brought her in. I stood at attention with 47 other veterans, each of us waiting for our combat companion assignment, the Alliance's newest brilliant idea for integrating Valorian refugees into military service. The brass called it mutual benefit. We called it babysitting duty. Sergeant Marcus Cole, the Admiral, announced, and I stepped forward expecting another briefing packet, maybe a handshake. Instead, 2 guards escorted a small figure toward me. She couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall, wrapped in a standard-issue gray cloak, 3 sizes too large. Her skin was pale lavender, almost translucent, and her enormous silver eyes, taking up nearly a third of her face, were darting everywhere except at me. She was trembling. "This is Kira," the Admiral said, as if introducing a new piece of equipment. "She'll be assigned to your unit effective immediately." I looked down at her. She looked at the floor. "Sir," I said carefully, with respect, "I run reconnaissance missions, deep cover, combat zones. I'm aware of your record, Sergeant. 17 successful operations, 0 companion casualties." He smiled without warmth. "That's exactly why she's yours." Crowd dispersed. The other veterans walked away with their own assignments, most of them adult Valorians, trained specialists, engineers, medics. Useful. I got a child who flinched when I moved. "How old are you?" I asked once we were alone. She didn't answer. "Can you understand me?" Tiny nod. "Then speak." 14 cycles, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, musical in a way that felt wrong in this gray military corridor. Equivalent to, "You're 17 years. 17th and old enough to enlist back on Earth, young enough that everything about this felt deeply wrong." "Why you?" I asked. Her silver eyes finally met mine, and for a moment I saw something other than fear there. Something like shame. "I am the last of my bonding caste," she said. "My people. Before the Keth destroyed our homeworld, we served as companions to warriors. It was considered an honor, a sacred duty." She swallowed. "I am the only one who survived, so they're making you do it again. They are giving me purpose." Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "Without a bond, I am nothing. An empty vessel. This is... it's... mercy." I'd been a soldier for 12 years. I'd seen mercy. This wasn't it. "You don't have to be afraid of me," I said, though I wasn't sure why I bothered. She looked up at me, the scarred, tired, too large human with blood still under his fingernails from last week's mission, and said nothing. She didn't have to. We both knew what she was thinking. My quarters were small. Standard NCO housing, bunk, desk, footlocker, and a bathroom the size of a closet. They'd added a second cot against the far wall, clearly an afterthought. "That's yours," I said, pointing. She stood in the doorway, clutching a small bag to her chest. Everything she owned in the universe, apparently, fit in something the size of a shoebox. "You may enter," I said when she didn't move. "I require permission?" "No. It's just, look, I'm not going to hurt you. Okay? Whatever you've been told about humans, whatever you've seen, I'm not that." She stepped inside slowly, like the floor might be mined. "I have seen humans," she said quietly, setting her bag on the cot. "On Valoria before the end. They came to evacuate civilians. One of them..." She paused. "One of them carried me for 6 kilometers because I could not run fast enough. He was shot 3 times. He did not stop." "Did he survive?" "No." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. She sat on the edge of her cot, her feet dangling above the floor, and watched me with those enormous eyes. "What is expected of me?" she asked. "What duties do I perform?" "I don't know," I admitted. "They didn't exactly give me an instruction manual. In my caste we were trained from birth. We learned to sense our warriors' needs, anticipate their pain, share their burdens." She looked down at her hands. "I can feel emotions. Not thoughts, but the shape of feelings. It is how we bond. You can feel what I'm feeling right now. Exhaustion," she said softly. "Anger. Not at me, but at everything. And something else." She tilted her head. "Loneliness. Very old loneliness." I stared at her. "You're going to be a real problem, aren't you?" For the first time, something flickered across her face. Not a smile, but the ghost of one. "I will try not to be." I dreamed of Valoria that night. I'd never been there, but the reports were classified reading for anyone in reconnaissance. The Keth had glassed the planet from orbit, but not before spending 3 days hunting survivors in the cities. 6 billion Valorians reduced to a few 100,000 refugees scattered across Alliance space. The sound that woke me wasn't the dream. It was real. Quiet sobbing from the other side of the room. I lay still, staring at the ceiling. I could pretend I didn't hear. That's what I should do. That's what any sane person would do. Instead, I sat up. Kira, all. The sobbing stopped abruptly. I heard her scrambling, trying to compose herself. I apologize, she said, her voice thick. I did not mean to disturb your rest. It will not happen again. How long has it been since you slept through the night? Silence. Since the evacuation? More silence. Then, longer. I ran a hand over my face. 12 years of combat. 17 successful operations. 0 companion casualties, because I'd never had a companion, never wanted one, never needed the complication. And now I had a traumatized teenager who could literally feel my emotions, crying alone in the dark. The nightmares don't stop, I said finally. I won't lie to you about that. But sometimes they get quieter. How long? Depends. For me, about 4 years. I heard her draw a shaky breath. That is a very long time. Yeah, I said, it is. I didn't say anything else. Neither did she. But somehow, eventually, we both fell asleep. 3 weeks later, Command sent us our first mission. Forward observation post on Helion 4, Captain Rodriguez explained, pulling up the holographic map. The Keth have been probing the sector. We need eyes on their patrol patterns before the main fleet arrives. I studied the terrain. Rocky highlands, limited cover, temperatures that drop to -40 at night. A nightmare for any standard unit. Who else is assigned? Just you. Rodriguez glanced at Kira, who stood silently at my side. And your companion? Sir, she has no combat training. No field experience. Sending her into a potential hot zone is exactly what the integration program requires. He closed the hologram. The Valorians were warriors once, Sergeant. The brass wants to see if they still can be. Kira said nothing. But I felt her hand brush against my arm. Just briefly, and for a moment I caught something from her. Not fear this time. Determination. The transport dropped us at dusk. Helion 4 was beautiful in a brutal way. Jagged cliffs of red stone, a sky filled with 3 small moons, and wind that cut through every layer of thermal protection. Stay close, I said, checking my rifle. Step exactly where I step. And if I say run, you run. No arguments. Where would I run to? Away. As far and fast as you can. She looked up at me, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. I will not leave you. That's not how this works. If things go bad, your survival is the priority. I've been doing this a long time. I can take care of myself. That is not what I mean. She pulled her cloak tighter. Companions do not abandon their bonded. It is physically impossible for me. The connection does not allow it. We're not bonded. No, she agreed quietly. We are not. But she didn't sound entirely convinced. We hiked through the night, reaching the observation point just before dawn. It was a shallow cave overlooking a valley. Good sight lines, defensible position, cold as hell. I set up the monitoring equipment while Kira huddled against the back wall, trying to stay warm. Eat something, I said, tossing her a ration pack. I am not hungry. Eat anyway. Your body is burning calories just trying to stay alive up here. She opened the pack, examined the contents with obvious distaste, and took a small bite. Human food is very solid. She. That's one word for it. What word would you use? Terrible. I'd use terrible. That ghost of a smile again. Slightly stronger this time. Then why do you eat it? Because the alternative is starving to death, and I've been told that's worse. She laughed. It was quiet, startled, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. But it was real. I found myself smiling. Get some rest, I said, turning back to the equipment. First watch is mine. I can help watch. You can barely keep your eyes open. My eyes are much larger than yours. Surely that is an advantage. I paused. Did you just make a joke? I am attempting to integrate into human military culture. The briefings suggested humor was valued. The briefings were written by people who've never actually met soldiers. But you smiled. Damned. She was observant. Rest, I said. That's an order. She settled against the wall, pulling her knees to her chest. Marcus? It was the first time she'd used my name. Yeah? Thank you for not sending me back. I didn't know she'd been afraid of that. But of course she had. Horse. Get some sleep, Kira. Death Patrol appeared on day 3. I spotted them through my scope, a standard reconnaissance unit, 5 soldiers moving in formation along the valley floor. They were heading east toward the main Alliance position. Don't move, I whispered to Kira. Don't even breathe. She was frozen beside me, her eyes fixed on the aliens below. The Keth were tall, insectoid, their chitinous armor gleaming in the pale sunlight. They moved with mechanical precision, their weapons always raised, always scanning. Are they the ones? She asked so quietly I barely heard her. I didn't have to ask what she meant. Yeah, they're the ones. She watched them pass. I watched her. Her face was absolutely still, but I could see her hands shaking. When they finally disappeared over the ridge, she exhaled, a long, trembling breath. I thought I would feel rage, she said. I thought that seeing them would make me want to do something. But I just feel empty. She nodded. That's normal. Revenge sounds good in theory. In practice, it doesn't fill anything. It just makes more holes. How do you know? I looked at her. She deserved honesty. Because I spent 5 years trying to fill my holes with Keth corpses. All I got was more nightmares. She was quiet for a long moment. Then why do you still fight? Because somebody has to. Because there are people worth protecting. Because I stopped. I hadn't thought about this in a long time. Because I don't know how to do anything else. That is very sad. That's very accurate. She surprised me then. She reached out and placed her small hand over mine. Just for a moment. Just long enough for me to feel something I didn't recognize at first. Warmth, flowing from her to me. What are you doing? Giving, she said simply. In my culture, we do not only take emotions. We can share them. It is, but, the foundation of bonding. I didn't ask for that. No. She withdrew her hand. You did not. I apologize if it was unwelcome. But I could still feel it. Faint, like the last echo of a song. Something light, something almost like hope. It wasn't unwelcome, I said finally. It was just unexpected. She nodded, but I could tell I'd hurt her somehow. These Valorians and their emotional transparency, it was like trying to navigate a minefield while wearing a bell. We finished the mission without incident. The Keth Patrol data was transmitted to command, and the transport picked us up 2 days later. As we lifted off from Helion 4, Kira fell asleep against my shoulder. I should have moved her. Should have maintained professional distance. Should have done a lot of things. Instead, I just let her sleep. The attack came without warning. 6 months into our assignment, the Keth hit Station Prometheus with everything they had. 3 cruisers, a dozen fighter wings, and a ground assault force that outnumbered our garrison 10-1. I was in the mess hall when the first missiles hit. Kira! I was running before the debris stopped falling. Kira! She'd been in our quarters, right in the path of the initial bombardment. The corridors were chaos, smoke, screaming, the wail of emergency klaxons. I pushed through soldiers and civilians, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The door to our section was blocked by twisted metal. I didn't think. I just started pulling, tearing my hands open on the jagged edges until I'd made a gap wide enough to squeeze through. Kira, here. Her voice. Weak, but alive. I'm here. Unheard beneath a collapsed ceiling panel, curled into a ball. Protecting something. No, protecting herself, the way I'd taught her. Are you hurt? I do not think so. Panel? It fell beside me, not on me. Held her out, ran my hands over her arms and legs, checking for injuries. She was shaking, but intact. We have to move. The Keth will be sending ground troops, I know. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. I can feel them. Marcus, I can feel them coming. There are so many. Her empathy. I'd almost forgotten it worked on non-humans too. How many? Hundreds, maybe thousands. And they're... She shuddered. They're hungry. That's the only word I have for it. They feel hungry. The Keth didn't take prisoners. Everyone knew that. Stay behind me, I said. We're getting to the armory, and then we're getting off the station. The corridors were worse than before. Bodies now alongside the debris. I kept Kira close, kept myself between her and the worst of it. Don't look, I said. Just keep moving. I have seen death before. Not like this. Not. A Keth soldier appeared around the corner. I fired on instinct, 3 shots to center mass. It dropped, its chitinous armor cracked and leaking dark fluid. Kira screamed. Not at the violence, at something else. What? It's death, she gasped, clutching her head. I felt it die. I felt... Block it out. I cannot, Kira, look at me. I grabbed her shoulders, forced her to meet my eyes. You can. You survived Valoria. You survived 6 months of training with a grumpy old soldier who doesn't know how to have a conversation. You can survive this. Just focus on me. Focus on my emotions. Use me as an anchor. She was trembling, tears streaming down her face, but she nodded. I will try. We made it to the armory. I grabbed extra weapons, ammunition, a tactical vest for myself, and a smaller one I strapped onto Kira over her protests. I am not a soldier. Today you are. I cannot shoot. Then, don't. But if I go down, you'll have options. Her face went pale. You will not go down. Kira, no doubt. She stepped forward, placing her hands on my chest. You will not. I will not allow it. I felt it then. Something flowing from her into me. Not just warmth this time. Strength. Energy. Like a shot of adrenaline, but cleaner, lasting. What companions do more than share emotions, she said. We can give them. In battle we gave our warriors strength, focus, courage. Her eyes met mine, fierce now, nothing like the frightened child I'd met 6 months ago. I'm giving you everything I have. That's not, it is my choice. My purpose. Let me help you. I wanted to argue. Every regulation, every instinct told me to refuse. But we were surrounded by thousands of Keth on a dying station, with no guarantee of rescue. Okay, I said. Okay. We fought our way to the evacuation bay. I don't know how many Keth I killed that day. Dozens at least. Maybe more. I was faster than I'd ever been, more accurate, tireless in a way that should have been impossible. Kira stayed behind me, her hand pressed against my back, feeding me everything she had. It was wrong. It was using her. It was... You are not using me, she whispered, as if reading my thoughts. I am choosing. There is a difference. You're exhausting yourself. I am keeping you alive. At what cost? She didn't answer. We reached the bay. 3 shuttles remained, their engines already warming. Rodriguez was there, organizing the evacuation. Cole, get your companion on a shuttle. Yes, sir. Tried to pull Kira toward the nearest ship, but she stumbled. Her skin had gone from pale lavender to nearly white, and her silver eyes were dull, unfocused. Kira, I am tired, she murmured. Just very tired. I caught her as she collapsed. What did you do? I demanded, lifting her into my arms. What did you give me? Everything, she breathed. You needed everything. I didn't wait for orders. I carried her onto the shuttle, ignoring the shouts behind me, ignoring the explosions outside. I found a seat, strapped us both in, and held her against my chest as the ship lurched into space. Don't you die, I said, my voice breaking in a way it hadn't in years. Don't you dare die, that's an order. Do you understand? She smiled weakly. See? I told you. I would not leave you. Kira, I am not dying, Marcus. Her eyes fluttered closed. I'm just sleeping. I will be very hungry when I wake. She went limp in my arms. I held her all the way to the rescue fleet. I held her through the medical scan, through the doctor's assurances that she was merely exhausted, not damaged. I held her until they finally pried her from my arms and put her on a proper bed. And then I sat beside that bed and waited. 12 hours later, she opened her eyes. You are still here, she said, surprised. Where else would I be? You do not have to stay. I am safe now. Kira. I leaned forward, taking her small hand in mine. Do you understand what you did? You almost killed yourself for me. I protected my bonded. We are. Her silver eyes were clear now, certain. It happened during the battle. When I gave you everything, when you accepted it, the bond formed. I felt it. Did you not? I thought about the connection I'd felt, the warmth, the strength, the overwhelming need to keep her safe, to get her out, to make sure she survived no matter what. Yeah, I admitted. I felt it. Are you angry? I should have been. This wasn't what I'd signed up for. This wasn't what either of us had planned. But looking at her now, this fierce, stubborn, impossible girl who'd poured herself empty just to keep me alive, I couldn't find any anger. No, I said. I'm not angry. Then what are you? I thought about it. Really thought, for the first time in years, about what I actually felt. Grateful, I said finally. Terrified, confused. I squeezed her hand. And very glad you're okay. She smiled. A real smile, bright and warm and nothing like the ghost I'd seen before. That is a good start. They promoted me after Prometheus. Master Sergeant with a commendation for valor. They wanted to give Kira a medal too, but she refused. I did not fight for recognition, she said. I fought for you. The brass didn't know what to do with that, so they just gave her a formal integration success certificate and moved on. We were reassigned to a training facility on Luna, safe, quiet, far from the front line. I think Command was worried about what would happen if they sent their bonded pair back into combat. Honestly, so was I. You're different now, Rodriguez told me during my debrief. Everyone can see it. Different how? Lighter. Like something that was eating you finally stopped. I thought about that. About the loneliness Kira had sensed on our first day. The very old loneliness, she'd called it. About the walls I'd built over 12 years of war. They were still there. But they had doors now. Maybe that's not a bad thing, I said. Maybe not. Rodriguez smiled. Just don't go soft on me, Cole. We might need you again. Luna was quiet. Too quiet after the chaos of the front lines. But Kira thrived here, training with other Valorian refugees, learning combat techniques I didn't even know existed. My cast was not always just companions, she explained one evening, as we watched the Earth rise over the horizon. Before the war, before the Keth came, we were warrior partners. We fought alongside our bonded, not just supported them. What happened? The war happened. Our warriors died. We were told to stay behind to preserve the bonding tradition. She looked down at her hands. I always wondered what it would have been like to fight. To be more than a vessel for someone else's strength. You were more than that on Prometheus. Was I? Kira, you saved my life. You saved dozens of lives, because you kept me on my feet long enough to get everyone out. But I collapsed. I was useless at the end. I turned to face her. In the years since we'd met, she'd grown, not much physically, but in other ways. More confident. More certain of her place. But some wounds took longer to heal. Listen to me, I said. You gave everything you had. That's not weakness. That's not being useless. That's courage. The kind of courage most soldiers never find, no matter how many battles they fight. You truly believe that? I know it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, the bond changes things. You know that, yes? What do you mean? In my culture, bonding is for life. It is not a contract that can be broken. When I gave you everything on Prometheus, when the bond formed, I tied my life to yours. Forever. I should have panicked. Should have felt trapped, cornered, bound by something I'd never agreed to. Instead, I felt relief. Is that why you've been so distant lately? I asked. You were afraid I'd resent it, do you not? Kira, I spent 12 years building walls. I convinced myself I didn't need anyone, didn't want anyone, couldn't afford to care because caring meant losing and losing meant breaking. I reached out and took her hand. You broke through every single one of those walls. And I'm not angry about it. I'm grateful. But you did not choose, neither did you. You were handed to me like a piece of equipment. You were scared and alone and grieving, and they expected you to just perform, to be useful, to justify your existence. I tightened my grip on her hand. We didn't choose each other, but we found each other anyway. And that matters more than choice. Her silver eyes were shining. You feel differently now. The bond, I can sense it. The loneliness is still there, but it is not so heavy. That's because of you. No, Wine. She shook her head. That is because of us. The bond is not one-sided, Marcus. What you give me, I give back. What I feel, you help me carry. This is partnership. This is what my caste was always meant to be. Equal? Yes. Not master and servant. Not protector and protected. Two warriors standing together. I thought about the terrified girl I'd met in that gray corridor a year ago. The one who flinched when I moved. The one who thought she was nothing without a bond. She wasn't that girl anymore. And I wasn't the same bitter, exhausted soldier who'd resented her assignment. You know they're going to send us back eventually, I said. The war isn't over. The Keth are still out there. I know, it'll be dangerous. We might not survive. I know that too. She smiled, but we will face it together. That is what bonded do. And if I order you to run, to save yourself, then I will ignore you. As I always do. I laughed. I couldn't help it. You're going to be a real problem, aren't you? I believe you asked me that once before. What did you say? I said I would try not to be. Her smile widened. I have since reconsidered. I pulled her into a hug. It was the first time I'd done that. Really held her, not in desperation or crisis, but in simple affection. She stiffened for a moment, surprised, then relaxed into it. Marcus, yeah? Thank you for seeing me. What do you mean? On that first day you looked at me and saw a burden. Problem. But you also saw something else. Something worth protecting. Something worth knowing. She pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. No one had looked at me like that since Valoria. I saw a scared kid who deserved better. You saw a person. That was enough. I didn't have words for what I felt in that moment. So I just held her and let the bond between us carry what language couldn't. Outside the window, the earth hung in the void, blue and green and impossibly alive. Somewhere out there, the war continued. Somewhere the Keth were planning their next attack. But here, in this quiet room on Luna, a grumpy old soldier and a 4-foot-tall alien who'd once been terrified of him stood together. Not master and companion. Not protector and protected. Partners. And for the first time in 12 years I wasn't lonely anymore.